Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Magnanimous Collective. I'm your host, Sean Kubota. Let's take a deep breath into the belly. And let it go. Oh yeah. Dropped in. It's a little bit different setup, huh? Today you are joining me for a special solo podcast in Joshua Tree at our Airbnb. It has been a profound week. It has been a profound months of creating Magnanimous Collective, and I have not done a solo pod since the very first episode. Since then, we've had 12 more episodes, 13 episodes total. This makes number 14. And my plan was always to do more solo pods and to disperse them in between the guest podcasts. The guest pods are a lot of work to edit. I'm doing everything on my own. Filming, editing, posting, all the things. And it's a lot of work. And my goal in making these podcasts isn't to make a Joe Rogan podcast that makes all this money. I mean, that would be nice. My goal is to finally do something and speak out about topics and try to speak in a voice that I feel called to speak from because I don't hear it much. There's a lot of dissonance of opinion, but also dissonance of feeling and dissonance of not being met, not being heard, not being understood. And whether it's my nature, my astrology, my whatever, I have an inherent desire for fairness, for justice, for things to be aligned, balanced, and, you know, devil's advocate, so to speak. I don't really like that term, but I'm always seeing like, where are the other edges? And yet, ultimately, everything does come down to sovereignty. It comes down to empowerment of personal accountability. And I've been playing it somewhat safe. I've disclosed some things in these podcasts, and maybe I'll talk about that today. Because there's a lot going on in the world. Whether you're on the left side or the right side or whatever side, there's still an opportunity for understanding. There's an opportunity for ownership. There's an opportunity for compassion, even if the other side is wrong. And most likely both sides are wrong to some extent. You know what I mean? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention we're by firelight. We're by a fire, in case you're just listening to this and not seeing it. And with that, I'm going to throw another log into the fire. Give me one moment. One of the things I'd like to talk about, something that's been very alive for me, is, for one, the act of playing the comparison game. But more so, what alludes me to that is the conundrum of walking the path less traveled, of choosing to do things that involve faith, choosing to believe in oneself when it seems delusional, when it seems irrational, and choosing to move forward in those ways. Now, some people will move forward towards a certain level of success because they are looking for security in the sense of coveting or patching over a wounding of self-worth, something like that. It's a different thing if you understand your inherent worth and you're moving forward in that way, and yet you are met with the reflection of not being there yet, in the sense of financial success, in the sense of time freedom, sense of being able to be generous as we'd like. That's something that's been coming up for me lately. And one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because I know that I'm not alone in that. It's very difficult in this world. You know, the Bible talks about the world being run by the devil, and we could take that metaphorically or literally. In either case, it is very obvious and apparent, especially in our Western world, that quote unquote sinful acts that are out of integrity, acts that are without love, without honor, without virtue, often are prized, often are rewarded in the sense of financial reward, which then allows for time freedom and all of these things. And yet what people do with that financial reward, that's, you know, if you open one door, you know, and then you have the keys to all the subsequent doors, are any of those doors, you know, do those lead to good paths? I don't know. And that's for the individual to decide, and they can always choose to do better, and to sometimes they might have to go through that path in order to learn and to grow and to transform and to metamorphosize and then choose the better thing. But it is fascinating to be in that space where you are choosing in every moment. Be honest with you, sometimes I'm having moments where I'm not choosing it, and I'm choosing to be a negative person, choosing to feel hopeless, choosing to feel embarrassed and ashamed, to feel small and weak, when that is not a normal thing for me to feel at all. I usually feel very empowered, very strong, very driven, very purposeful. And yeah, recently some really beautiful things happened in my family. My brother had his baby boy, which I'm fucking over the moon about. He's so cute and he's amazing. And it's beautiful for my family, my mom and dad, to get this gift, because I told my brother last year, like, that's the one gift that would really matter to them. They're like, I'd love to be able to give them cars and houses and all these things, but that would really be the biggest gift. And he was able to do that. And so I'm really thankful for him, and I'm thankful that my parents get that. And there's a certain level of shame there for me, being the eldest and being in the position that I'm at right now. It's a lot of pride to swallow. It's a lot of story and narrative that I have to get past as to why am I not there yet? Why do I not have the nice house? Why do I not have the child yet? Why can't I rectify things within my romantic relationships and get there? Why can't I support my romantic relationships in the way that I want to? And I'm moving forward towards that. And at the same time, this is where I'm at. And I've done so many things. Some of you may have seen, I did that post this week where I showed not even all the iterations, because there are even more, but like the many iterations of Sean, of being the passionate Scorpio, being everything from the artist, literal 2D painter artist, to the break dancer, house dancer, to the real estate salesman, the real estate investor, the raw vegan, the yoga teacher, the organic vegan chef, raw vegan chef, the sound healer, the essential oil company entrepreneur, the financial advisor. And the documentarian. And to be here, to be going forward with not only my dream was really to be a musician and a singer. And that's another thing I didn't mention in the endeavors, but what I'm doing right now feels like purpose. It feels like the thing that needs to happen in order for me to die and pass on and feel okay. And some of you may really resonate with that, and some of you might not. And some may see what I'm doing or have done and say that's irresponsible. And there's that perspective as well. At the same time, I've been led the entire way by such a visceral, guttural sensation and reaction that it was like, doing anything else feels like dying. Doing anything else feels like ugh, like my stomach's gonna come out of my mouth. And that's led me here. And so what's fascinating is being in that conundrum of purpose and movement and commitment. Because I gotta tell you guys have been seeing me pump this stuff out. It has not been easy. A lot of it has been I'm gonna get it done, because it's like sometimes I'm just riding the edge of like getting the thing edited and uploaded in time, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm just barely making it, and then I'm making it and I'm holding that commitment to post in every day and putting out one of these a week. And it doesn't stop here. This podcast is supposed to be a means to create the platform to have even more impact, to fulfill that purpose even more. And so yeah, my point in all this is to share that if any of you are going through that, of choosing to be honorable, choosing to have morals and ethics, choosing to do things in a good way, in a loving way that might not necessarily seem accurate in the state of capitalistic, emotionless business, you're not alone. And two, that yes, there is a conundrum with being empowered and feeling worthy and choosing to walk that way and choosing to feel that way, and yet also being met with the literal, visceral, 3D realization and reminder near every day that you're not there yet. Which is kind of fucked up. And at the same time, how can we choose to switch and reframe that perspective towards something that is healthy and supportive, and something that allows for us to utilize that as fuel, utilize that as inspiration, utilize that as something that can help us go forward in a good way. Yeah. And for those of you who are potentially considering making movement towards that space, maybe you've been second guessing it, doubting it. I will say that there's, from my extensive line of quote unquote failures, which have all gotten me to here. So what is a failure? The only failure is the giving up, the end. But if we choose to keep moving forward, then it is a lesson learned and transformed and regenerated as fertile soil for us to grow something new. So yeah, with that, I'm still in support of people going forward in what they feel called to do. And it is not an easy road. And it is a spiritual walk and a spiritual path. And I will say that for the potentially, I won't say the first time in my life, but the most powerful time in my life, I am being tested as to what faith means, what it really looks like, what it really feels like. And as I'm getting closer to that, it brings me closer to this space of our ancestry and a reminder that our ancestors didn't have any of the shit that we have now. They didn't have smartphones to look up what illness they might have. They didn't have an app to, find the weather, even though they had ways of knowing certain things, right? There's a certain level of faith, prayer, and humility that they had to have gotten us to this space now. And as I'm trying to honor them backwards and forwards, I also need to be humble enough to listen to them, to learn from them, to remember them, which is how you listen and learn, yeah? So, yeah. Challenging things, very good things, but all in all, worthwhile. But sure does come with some heaviness, is all I'll say. With that, I'm gonna wet my whistle with this Ollie Pop. Yummy. All right. I just gotta say, being around this fire, and I don't even know how this audio is gonna come out. It's getting a little windy. I don't have my lavs. I'm recording off of this amazing broadcast shotgun mic. I bought an XLR cable for almost $50 today because I'm out in Joshua Tree, and just plans didn't go at all like expected. And that's another thing that came up this weekend was like my plans for doing what I was gonna do just completely went skurch. And it was a special time for a special ceremony that I wanted to have with myself, which I'm still having. And what a beautiful ceremony that I got to have with my family. But even then I was met with this like frustration, like, I didn't get to do, like I was holding space for this and I had an intuitive feeling that it wasn't going to work out, and it didn't. And it's one thing to choose to feel okay about anything and everything that happens. That can be a certain level of acceptance and that there's merit in that. There's also room for those feelings, of feeling upset, of feeling like frustrated, of feeling all these things. As much as I would love for people not to be in a space of victimhood, and I would love for them to recognize the context of what I talk about on the pod all the time. I want to make this clear. I am never wanting to dismiss or shift, or not shift, sorry. I would love for them to shift, but I'm not ever wanting to dismiss the potential possibility of anyone's feelings and or the stories that they would like to make. All I'd like to do is empower all of us to recognize how powerful we are, and that we are choosing every moment how we choose to perceive our reality, and then how we respond to it in that creating it. Yeah. That's all. And then you could do whatever the fuck you want. Which is a funny way to be about it. And yet, one of the things that I've been thinking about too is that, as we are all quote unquote children of God, if that's how you want to see it, however you want to see it, and all different ways and realities of existence and ways of being, and all different ways of perceiving this reality. Who's to say that it is not the fun reality, or that it is the fun reality to forget who we are, forget how powerful we are, to choose to act small. And maybe it's fun. I mean, as I was experiencing it this past weekend, I was like, why am I spiraling so deep into this? Is it just a chemical makeup? Is it a descent? Is it nice to have the descent every now and then into seeming madness, into hell? Literally looks like I'm in hell right now. This fire. But truly, why do we go there? And as things are cyclical, as things, come back around and figure themselves out, what I will say is that through this processing of shame and guilt and being upset and all these things, finally that voice is able to come through and kind of just like, at least for myself, shake me out of it. And it almost feels like, at least for me, I don't know how it is for everyone else, but sometimes, like Yaya said, sometimes those emotions need to come in order for the ownership to come about, right? Sometimes we need to feel those feelings. And it's been interesting to be in that space. And with that, I honor those feelings, and I honor the fact that sometimes people just need to fucking act up, feel sorry for themselves, need to feel like shit, need to be dramatic. Like as I was like feeling the way I felt, I'm gonna put another log on. Hold on. As I was feeling the way I felt, I was feeling like, man, being dramatic, dude. Get your shit together. And at the same time, the other part of me was like, you need to feel this right now. So, with that being said, I'd love to move on to some other topics that haven't been discussed. Now, I'm not sure where people are at. I'm not sure where people are at with their political stances. And I'm finding that people are very much in extremes of political stances. And because someone saying this or someone saying that, presidential candidates, la-di-da, that we get so riled up about it because of the opposition. And I can totally understand that. And yet, when it all comes down to it, what I would invite people to do, to reflect on, is where in politics, in that space, whether it's right side, left side, whatever, what are specific policies, what are specific actions that support sovereignty? That's it right there. What are the specific policies, and which ones support sovereignty? Because I know for a fact that on the left, there are issues that are really heartfelt and actually deny sovereignty, and actually are caught up in saviorhood in an unhealthy way, and in a way deny and dismiss the honoring of an individual's choice to suffer. There's the exact same thing on the right side. And there is a mandating for individuals to do a certain thing based on certain belief systems. They're on both sides. All right, let me just say this. On both sides of the table, there are specific policies that outlaw, demonize, and restrict individuals from being sovereign, whether from a space of supreme altruism and trying to save people and not honoring their sovereign right to suffer, or by mandating certain things on people, and this happens on both sides, mandating things on people, whether that be speech or whether that be, uses of body, etc., which is an individual sovereign right. Now, both of these sides take it to an extreme. And this is the issue, right? And so please heed that invitation to think about if this specific person, policy, team, organization, whatever the heck it is it in support and attached to sovereignty? Is it in support and attached to ownership? Is it trying to censor people? So I talk about sovereignty a lot on this podcast, right? So what is sovereignty? Sovereignty for me, let's define sovereignty. Sovereignty literally means to wield ultimate power, right? Sovereignty, what it means to me is that you are responsible for your reality creation, whether you choose to accept that responsibility or not. You're still fucking liable for it, right? And with that, you are powerful. A part of that is you wielding that ultimate power to create, to destroy, to do whatever the fuck you want, really. Free will. And with that, there are certain aspects of life that, when seen through a lens of sovereignty, like policy, politics, all these things, cleared up, lickety split. How would that look? Okay, for one, can't tell a motherfucker what to say or what he can't say, unless it's literally going to cause actual harm, like, oh, I'm going to kill you and I have a knife or something like that. There are certain things that you can't say because there's a threat of harm, and then there are repercussions for that. Outside of that, you're allowed to dislike whoever the hell you want. You're allowed to hate whoever you want. You're allowed to do just as you are allowed to love to the highest extent. The polarity of that is also there. And that's what freedom looks like. That's what sovereignty looks like. When an individual crosses a threshold of boundary, however, there must be consequences. That's also part of sovereignty, right? Your actions have consequences. And what I find that's really fascinating on both sides of politics right now is that there are regulations and laws that want to be passed that infringe on individual sovereignty, right? One on the right that's very specific that causes a lot of problems is abortion. Now, do I love abortion? Absolutely not. It's horrific, and the way that we're going about it these days is as a form of last minute birth control. And I know that there are always going to be outliers for certain things, and there's going to be certain situations where it's hey, this needs to happen, right? So the thing about abortion, right? And so this is where the left and the right get all angry at each other and can't agree. Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't be able to outlaw what a person can do to their own body. Period. And this is also where if people want to be trans and they want to, get trans surgery, or they want to do body modifications. There are people who get piercings and stuff like that and get crazy stuff under their skin and stuff like that. You're sovereign. You should be able to do whatever you want. And there are certain consequences to that. The consequence for all of this should be that you want something done, you pay for it, right? That is actually that is the fair exchange, right? So one side is saying, you can't do this, right? One side saying, I should be able to. And then the middle point is, you can do it, but the government shouldn't have to pay for you to do what you want to do. There should be you choosing to make that happen, because that's where it gets sticky. More rational people end up getting upset that their quote unquote taxpayer dollars, which this fucking this government spends way more money, way more of our tax dollars on more corrupt shit, like leaving, hundreds of thousands of guns, in Afghanistan and stuff like that. We do all sorts of fucking corrupt shit behind closed doors. But point being, all in all, the biggest thing is, some more reasonable people will be like, okay, cool, you want to do this, you pay for it. The government, taxpayer dollars, people getting taxed up the butt shouldn't have to pay for people's sovereign choices. That's fair. I'm sorry, that's fair. I don't think that people should be limited by what they choose to do. Like, I don't want anyone to go and kill someone. I don't want anyone to go and cause atrocities. And yet if they do, they better damn well have the consequence of it. Like, hey, we're all living this life right now. It's a pretty psychedelic experience. It's a pretty wild experience. Everything is happening. Everything. To deny that is, it's not even ignorant. It's just ridiculous. It's foolish, right? Everything's happening right now. People are creating stories that you could never even think of, right? And that's their life, and they're choosing to do that. We need to, in order to have this life be held in a good way, there just has to be consequences for actions, and we need to have that across the board, right? I mean, it's very simple if we allow for ourselves to see it in a space of sovereignty, right? Like another big one is gun control, right? So on one side, there's individuals wanting to be able to have abortions and sex changes, but also not willing to let people have the opportunity to protect themselves with a firearm, right? Someone made this analogy that taking away all guns is like banning all sober drivers so that drunk drivers won't kill anyone. It's not. That is not sovereignty, right? And that's where I'm coming at this lens with, because if we're going to actually come to the space where we respect each other, that we start to hold each other in a space of empowerment, in a space of respect, in a space of honor, and come forward in a better way, we have to come from sovereignty. Now, I'm not saying everyone get a gun and everyone needs a gun. I'm not saying everyone get an abortion. I'm not saying everyone have a sex change surgery. What I am saying is that the very simple, clear line is, you want something, you can do it. There might be consequences attached, and those consequences should be when you cross a boundary and threshold of infringing on another person's sovereignty. Easy. Like, so easy. You steal from a person, boom, consequences. You kill someone or you hurt someone, boom, consequences. But if you just want to be wild, if you want to like turn yourself into a lizard like that lizard guy, you're free to do that. Now, is it anyone's responsibility and or fault that you did that now you regret that decision? Absolutely not. And should all of the finances, from taxpayers or whatever, pay for you to try to feel better about that and not self-delete? No, I'm sorry. That sounds terrible. I know. Do I want him to self-delete? Absolutely not. But there's a certain level of accountability there. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, when we start to baby each other and baby ourselves and come to this space where we're not actually honoring the individual and their chosen suffering, their chosen misery story, like, we're not actually loving them. We're not actually honoring them. And I know that that's weird, but there are boundaries within love, right? There's a way to love that has no's. And something that is very, very disturbing to me these days is children that are not told no. That there's this denial of the word no, or let them just tantrum it out. I've said this in podcasts previous, that negligence can be violence, right? I mean, it often is, but negligence is an act of violence. And when we come into this world, we're searching for boundaries. We're searching for how to navigate this world in an appropriate way, a way that allows for us to be safe, allows for us to be able to know where the limits are. And until we know where those are, we'll probably test them on our own. And if we are set with unreal limitations, that does not set us up appropriately for the real world, that is not going to, quote unquote, create a masquerade of life experience for us to act out in whichever way we want and tantrum in whichever way we want. That's just not going to happen. And so having these boundaries in love, whether it's with our children, whether it's with interpersonal relationships, romantic relationships, it's beyond important. It's vital. And how that plays out in the macrocosm of our governing judicial system, all of the stuff, it's all parallel, right? It's running in the same vein. I'm putting on another wood. Yeah, so that being said, maybe I've ruffled some of your feathers. I don't know. Maybe I've illuminated some of you. That would be my hope. Or maybe you're just in agreement. But seriously, like I know that I have people who are friends from the conscious community, and I've seen what they post, and I've seen their stance on things. And I'm like, you're liking my stuff when you have this outlook on specific things. And it's like, what's interesting about ownership is that it can be quote unquote cherry picked, but cherry picking it is not ownership, right? Like, I've said this to partners, I've said this to friends, like, you cannot cherry pick your ownership of something. If you do, you're like everything, it's like a ripple effect, right? It's like you either own your whole story or you don't. Otherwise, it's like a bag with holes in it and it's just leaking water. Like you don't have anything there, you know? And so what I find fascinating is I have all these friends who are like myself and they're supportive and I love them and that's great. And yet there are certain topics and certain things where I'm like, that's not sovereignty. That's not actually giving individuals the freedom. That's demanding special treatment, or that's demanding that because of your religious beliefs that everyone else can't do X, Y, and Z, right? It's on both sides of the table, right? Both sides, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, both have these agendas, both have specific instances of politics and policies that take away and deny sovereignty. And that's not okay. And with that being said, I implore you, I invite you to look into that. When you, instead of going with the tide, instead of being like, oh, it's the fashionable thing, depending on where I live, to be on the left or to be on the right, or to agree with X, Y, and Z, take a second, take a breath, and be like, is this giving specific people special treatment? Is this giving them a thing because, quote unquote, we should feel bad for them? Is this actually equality? Is this actually supporting sovereignty, or is it denying sovereignty in trying to save people and or enable them to do things and not have the consequences of their actions? Is this denying people's personal use of expression, or is it actually demanding people to reaffirm people's expression, right? Like there's both sides of that coin. So yeah, that's been something I've wanted to talk about for quite a while, and I'm sure we'll get deeper into it as things go in, but right now I want to kind of, there's a way to just like say it to people. There's a way I could just like go into the details. This thing. It's like, is that gonna help you, help people come to the right conclusions? Honestly, now I realize, like, no. The best way for me to have the most impact, to use my energy, my resources succinctly and effectively, is to ask the right questions, is to pose the right stories or examples, so that then maybe the awareness is found through the individual, through the sovereign individual, not by me telling it to you. Yeah. I hope this audio is coming out good, because I'm having a good time by the fire. Yeah. as I move forward with this project, and I completely gassed out all of my guest podcasts that I had recorded over like the first 2 months, and coming up on this week, I was like, man, I need to get more people on the pod. I need to get more guest pods. I'm like, oh shoot, who am I gonna call? And I was already so depressed and so stressed out. I was just like, I'm just gonna be with what is and just like have faith. I don't need to freak out about it. And like literally in a span of like 24 hours, I had like 4 people reach out to me who I had asked previously, or who wanted to be on the pod. And some people asked to be on the pod. I'm like, I don't know. And sometimes I do know that it's an absolute no. But yeah, it's been pretty profound that has all just like instantaneously emerged in a way that I feel really supported by. So with that, I can say that don't give up hope, because the good thing might be right around the corner. And that's a choice. Like, it's a choice to feel that way, because there might not be something, and it might be a couple shitty things before the good thing comes around the corner, And maybe the good thing coming around the corner is actually just gratitude for what you have left. Like, there's no way to quantify any of that. So it's a consistent choice to be in gratitude. It's a consistent choice to have faith, to choose to believe that this is for a bigger purpose, to choose to trust that what you're doing will have impact, have purpose. Yeah, and if you are, I'm riding that line right along with you. And with that said, like, we're blessed beyond measure, blessed beyond what we can potentially ever fully realize. Like it said, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, Like, imagine the things that we're able to do today that could just like only be like a figment of imagination. A lot of things we do today as a kid, I was like, we're only a figment of imagination, let alone our ancestry that didn't have cars, didn't have now we leisurely do sports and activities and work out. We're not consistently foraging for food. We're not nomadic. We're not potentially attacked by, a wild animal or suffering from illness or plagues. Like, it's pretty amazing, when we allow ourselves to compare to the past. It's very easy to find gratitude. So with that, this pod doesn't need to be that long. And I'm finding myself wanting to just breathe into the fire right now and not really have to talk. So I'm going to honor that. But I'd like to leave and end this podcast with saying that I'm grateful for all of you, for you, for listening, for supporting, for choosing to potentially expand your awareness or challenge your awareness, just to take a chance on what this might be, could be. And I really appreciate it. And if, I don't know, whatever your judgments have been for these past episodes, they may be valid as I was just like, all right, I'm going to do this. And now I've shown myself like 13 episodes, 14 episodes now later, like, yeah, I can do it. And like I've talked to, and I think I spoke to it in some of the pods I did, about being in the midst of it and not being able to be grateful in the midst of it, because I'm just so like, and now that's my work after being in it for as long as I have, and kind of not only being in a rhythm, but just being like, okay, it's now a thing you do. Even though it hasn't necessarily gotten much easier, or hasn't taken any less time, and I don't have the financial backing to make it easier of a load on me yet. We'll say that I'm here and I'm doing it, and I'm grateful for all of you supporting, and I'm honored and so lucky to be able to do what I'm doing now. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you, to talk through all of this, and to be in this beautiful space of sharing gratitude, of fulfilling my purpose, sitting around this fire with me. And I hope you've gotten something from this. With that said, this has been the Magnanimous Collective with me, your host, Sean Kubota. I'll see you next time.